Picture this. You're walking down a narrow, muddy street in a medieval English village on a cold October morning in Theratatiefen. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and something far less pleasant. Animal waste mixed with rotting straw. Your heavy woolen cloak pulls at your shoulders as you hurry through the pre-dawn darkness, a leather satchel bouncing against your hip with every step. You are a midwife, and today, like every day, you're walking directly into situations that would terrify most people. But here's what most people don't understand about your profession. This isn't just about helping babies into the world. This is about navigating a maze of superstition, ignorance, and genuine life or death decisions, where one wrong move could brand you a witch or cost multiple lives. The woman who sent for you lives in a cramped cottage on the outskirts of town. This is her fourth pregnancy, but only one of her previous children survived past their first winter. As you approach her door, you can already hear the sounds that will define the next several hours of your life. Low moaning, punctuated by sharp cries of pain. The frantic whispers of female relatives who have no idea what they're doing but refuse to leave. You pause at the threshold, taking a deep breath of the cold morning air because you know it might be the last clean breath you get for hours. The moment you step inside, you're entering a world where the line between life and death is measured in heartbeats, where your knowledge is both desperately needed and deeply mistrusted. The cottage interior hits you like a wall. The air is stifling, thick with smoke from a poorly ventilated fire and the overwhelming smell of unwashed bodies, fear, and blood. Candles flicker in the corners, casting dancing shadows that make everything seem more ominous than it already is. The woman's husband stands near the door, his face pale and drawn. He nods at you but says nothing. Men don't speak much during these times. They know this is women's work, dangerous women's work that they want no part of. But as you set down your satchel and begin unpacking your tools, you're acutely aware that everyone in this room is watching your every move with a mixture of hope and suspicion. These people need you desperately, but they also fear you, because in their minds, anyone who can help bring life into the world might also have the power to take it away. Your reputation in this village has been built over 15 years of successful deliveries, but that reputation is only as strong as your last case. One dead mother, one stillborn child, one baby born with a deformity that superstitious minds might attribute to witchcraft, and everything you've worked for could disappear in an afternoon. You could find yourself standing before a church tribunal or worse, facing an angry mob, convinced that you've made some unholy bargain. The woman on the birthing stool is young, maybe 18, but her face already shows the wear of multiple pregnancies and a hard life. Sweat beads on her forehead despite the October chill seeping through the cottage walls. She looks at you with eyes that hold both relief and terror. Relief because you're here, someone who knows what to do. Terror because she understands, perhaps better than anyone, that there's no guarantee she'll see tomorrow. You kneel beside her, your hands already moving to assess the situation. But as you begin your examination, you're doing far more than checking the progress of labor. You're making calculations that would be unthinkable to people in later centuries. How much blood loss is too much? At what point do you prioritize saving the mother over the child? Which of the herbs in your satchel might help with pain without causing other complications? And always, always, how do you navigate the expectations and beliefs of the people around you who think they understand birth, but actually know almost nothing? The birthing stool beneath her is a piece of furniture that tells its own story. Carved from oak, worn smooth by countless other women who have sat in this same position, facing this same uncertainty. The wood is stained dark, not just from age, but from the blood of previous deliveries. Some of those women survived, others didn't. You've attended births where women bled to death on stools just like this one, where infections set in days later despite your best efforts, where babies emerged stillborn after hours of agonizing labor. But you've also witnessed miracles. Babies who seemed destined to die, taking their first breath just when all hope seemed lost. Women who appeared to be bleeding to death, recovering completely within days. Complicated deliveries that somehow resolved themselves at the last possible moment. These experiences have taught you that birth is simultaneously the most natural thing in the world and the most dangerous. The woman's mother-in-law hovers nearby, muttering prayers under her breath while occasionally offering advice that you know from experience is more likely to cause harm than good. She keeps suggesting remedies that have been passed down through generations, most of them completely useless, some actively dangerous. A poultice made from chicken droppings to speed labor, holy water sprinkled on the birthing stool to ward off evil spirits, special positions that supposedly make delivery easier, but actually make it more difficult. You've learned to navigate these suggestions diplomatically. Outright dismissal would offend the family and could undermine their confidence in your abilities. But following bad advice could kill both mother and child. So you nod thoughtfully, acknowledge the wisdom of tradition, and then quietly do what you know actually works. Your hands move with practiced efficiency as you check the baby's position. This is always a critical moment. A baby positioned properly, head down and facing the right direction, has a good chance of being born safely. But babies positioned incorrectly can create complications that turn a normal delivery into a life-threatening emergency. Breech presentations where the baby's feet or buttocks emerge first. Transverse positions where the baby lies sideways across the birth canal. Face presentations where the baby's face, rather than the crown of the head, appears first. Each of these situations requires different techniques, different decisions about when to intervene and when to wait. And you're making those decisions based on knowledge gained through experience, trial and error, and information passed down from other midwives who learned the same way you did. There are no medical schools for women like you, no textbooks that explain the mechanics of difficult births, no hospitals with trained physicians standing by to help if things go wrong. You are, quite literally, the only person in this room who has any real understanding of what's happening and what might go wrong. The weight of that responsibility sits on your shoulders like a heavy cloak. Every decision you make could mean the difference between life and death for two people. And you're making these decisions in a world where people believe that difficult births might be caused by sin, witchcraft, or divine punishment. rather than simple biology. The contractions are coming stronger now, and you can see that the baby will arrive within the next few hours. But you've also noticed something that concerns you. The woman's breathing has changed, becoming more labored and shallow. Her skin has taken on a grayish pallor that you've learned to associate with dangerous blood loss. These are subtle signs that the untrained eye might miss, but they tell you that this delivery is moving into more dangerous territory. You reach into your satchel and withdraw a small cloth bundle containing herbs that might help. Shepherd's purse to control bleeding if it becomes excessive. Red raspberry leaf to strengthen contractions if they weaken. Comfrey root to help with healing after the birth. But as you prepare these remedies, you're acutely aware that using them carries its own risks. Herbs powerful enough to affect the human body are powerful enough to cause harm if used incorrectly. And in a world where people are quick to blame unusual deaths on supernatural causes, being found with a collection of medicinal plants could be dangerous for you personally. The woman's husband has been pacing near the door for the past hour, occasionally stepping outside to escape the intensity of what's happening inside. You understand his discomfort. Birth is messy, bloody, and filled with sounds that can be disturbing to people who aren't used to them. But his absence also means that if something goes wrong, if you need help moving the woman or applying pressure to control bleeding, you'll have to rely on her female relatives who may not have the strength or stomach for what needs to be done. As the morning progresses, you find yourself settling into the rhythm that defines your profession. Long periods of watchful waiting, punctuated by moments of intense activity. During the waiting periods, you monitor the woman's condition, offer comfort and encouragement, and prepare for whatever complications might arise. During the active periods, you're completely focused on guiding the baby safely into the world, while keeping the mother alive and as comfortable as possible. But throughout this process, you're also managing the expectations and fears of everyone around you. The woman herself, who is experiencing pain unlike anything most people ever endure. Her relatives, who want to help, but don't really understand what's happening. Her husband, who feels powerless and excluded from this mysterious female ritual. And always in the back of your mind, the broader community that will judge your success or failure based on the outcome of this day. You've seen what happens to midwives who lose too many patients. Sometimes they're simply avoided, their reputation destroyed by whispered rumors about their competence. But sometimes the consequences are much more severe. Accusations of witchcraft that can lead to imprisonment, torture, or execution. In a world where people desperately need explanations for tragedy, where scientific understanding of medicine is virtually non-existent, the woman who attends difficult births becomes an easy target for blame when things go wrong. The irony is not lost on you. Your skills are desperately needed, your presence requested urgently when labor begins, but your very expertise makes you suspect in the eyes of people who don't understand how you know what you know. How can you tell whether a baby is positioned correctly without being able to see it? How do you know which herbs will help with pain and which might cause harm. How can you predict which deliveries will be easy and which will be dangerous? To the people around you, your knowledge seems almost magical. And in a world where the line between helpful magic and harmful witchcraft is thin and constantly shifting, that perception puts you in constant danger. The baby is coming now, and you can see the crown of its head appearing with each contraction. This is the moment when all your training, all your experience, all your careful preparation comes together. Your hands move with practiced precision, supporting the baby's head as it emerges, checking for the umbilical cord around its neck, preparing to clear its mouth and nose so it can take that crucial first breath. But even in this moment of intense focus, part of your mind is already thinking ahead to what comes next. The delivery of the placenta, which must happen completely and safely or the mother could hemorrhage. The first few hours after birth, when both mother and baby are at their most vulnerable to infection or other complications. The days and weeks that follow, when your responsibility for their welfare gradually transitions from immediate medical care to ongoing support and advice. And always the knowledge that your reputation, your livelihood, and potentially your life depend on the outcome of cases like this one. The moment arrives with startling suddenness. One final powerful contraction and the baby's shoulders slip free. You cradle the tiny slippery form in your hands, feeling the incredible weight of a new life entirely dependent on your next actions. The baby is blue and silent, its small chest motionless. This is the moment that separates experienced midwives from those who panic and make fatal mistakes. You work quickly but calmly, your fingers clearing the baby's mouth and nose of fluid while you hold it at an angle that allows gravity to help drain its airways. The silence in the room is deafening. Even the laboring woman has stopped moaning, straining to hear that first cry that will tell everyone whether this birth is a triumph or a tragedy. Seconds stretch like hours as you gently stimulate the baby's back and chest, encouraging those first breaths. You've done this hundreds of times, but your heart still pounds during these crucial moments. Too much stimulation could cause injury. Too little might mean the difference between life and death. Around you, the family members hold their breath, their eyes fixed on the small form in your hands. Then it happens. A small cough, followed by a thin, wavering cry that gradually builds in strength. The baby's skin begins to pink up as oxygen flows through its tiny lungs for the first time. Relief floods through you, but you don't allow yourself to relax completely. This is only the beginning. You wrap the baby in clean linen cloth that you brought from your own supplies, knowing that the family's fabrics might not be adequately prepared. As you place the infant in its mother's arms, you're already shifting your attention back to her. The birth isn't over until the placenta is delivered safely, and this stage of labor carries its own deadly risks. The woman's face transforms as she holds her child, exhaustion temporarily forgotten in the wonder of new motherhood. But you notice the slight tremor in her hands, the way her breathing hasn't quite returned to normal. These could be signs of normal post-birth fatigue, or they could indicate more serious complications developing The placenta should come within 30 minutes of the baby's birth, but you've learned not to rush this process. Pulling too hard on the umbilical cord can cause the placenta to tear, leaving pieces inside the mother that will almost certainly cause fatal infection. Applying too much pressure to the woman's abdomen can cause internal bleeding or push the placenta higher into the womb, making delivery even more difficult. So you wait, your hands gently massaging the woman's lower abdomen while you watch for signs that the placenta is separating naturally. The cord lengthens slightly, a trickle of blood appears, and you feel the slight change in the shape of her belly. That tells you it's time to act. With careful pressure and gentle traction on the cord, you guide the placenta out intact. This moment requires all your experience and intuition. Too much force could tear the cord or damage the mother's internal organs. Too little might leave the placenta partially attached, creating a situation that could kill her within days. The placenta slides free, and you examine it carefully by candlelight. It must be complete, with no missing pieces that could remain inside to cause infection. The cord must be properly attached with no signs of abnormality that might indicate problems with the baby's health. Every detail matters because you won't have another chance to check once you leave this cottage. As you clean and examine the placenta, the woman's relatives begin the rituals that surround birth in this community. They prepare special foods believed to help new mothers regain their strength. They burn herbs thought to ward off evil spirits that might threaten the newborn. They begin the complex process of determining which day will be best for the baby's baptism, consulting calendars and local customs that you understand but don't necessarily believe in. Your role in these rituals is carefully defined, but also precarious. You're expected to participate in the community's traditions while maintaining your professional knowledge and judgment. When the grandmother suggests feeding the baby honey water within hours of birth, you must find a diplomatic way to prevent this without offending her. Honey can contain bacteria that could kill a newborn, but explaining this in terms these people would understand is nearly impossible. When the local wise woman arrives with charms and amulets to protect the child, you nod respectfully, while quietly ensuring that none of her interventions interfere with the medical care you know the baby needs. It's a delicate balance between honoring tradition and protecting your patients, one that requires political skills as much as medical knowledge. The hours immediately following birth are when your vigilance is most critical. Both mother and baby are exhausted from the delivery, making them vulnerable to complications that might not appear for several hours. You watch for signs of excessive bleeding that could indicate internal damage you missed during delivery. You monitor the baby's breathing and color, alert for symptoms of problems that weren't apparent at birth. The woman's temperature concerns you. She's developed a slight fever that could be normal post-birth recovery or the first sign of infection. In an era before antibiotics, infection is a death sentence that can develop with terrifying speed. You've seen women who seemed perfectly healthy immediately after delivery die within 3 days. from infections that began during or shortly after birth. Your herb collection includes remedies that might help with infection, but using them requires careful calculation of risks and benefits. Willow bark tea can reduce fever, but might also increase bleeding. Echinacea root could boost the woman's ability to fight infection, but might also cause other complications in someone who's already physically stressed from delivery. These decisions must be made with incomplete information based on experience rather than scientific testing, while surrounded by family members who have their own strong opinions about what treatments are appropriate. The woman's mother insists that keeping the new mother warm is most important and wants to pile heavy woolen blankets on her, despite the fever. Her husband believes that special prayers are more important than any physical treatment you might provide. As dawn breaks outside the cottage windows, you're entering the phase of your work that's often the most dangerous. The immediate crisis of delivery has passed, but the next few days will determine whether this birth is ultimately successful. You'll need to visit this family daily for at least a week, monitoring both mother and child for signs of complications that could develop at any time. Each visit will require you to make the same careful assessments, the same diplomatic navigation of family expectations, the same life and death decisions based on limited information. And throughout this period, your reputation in the community will be shaped by the outcome of this single case. The baby seems healthy, nursing successfully and showing good color and alertness. The mother's fever has stabilized, not getting worse, but not improving either. These are positive signs, but you know from experience that conditions can change rapidly in the days following birth. A baby who seems perfectly healthy can develop breathing problems or fail to thrive. A mother who appears to be recovering normally can suddenly develop life-threatening complications. Your satchel contains supplies for emergency situations, but your ability to handle serious complications is limited by the medical knowledge available in this era. If the baby stops breathing, you can attempt to clear its airways and stimulate breathing, but you have no way to provide the advanced interventions that might be necessary. If the mother develops severe infection, you can provide some herbal treatments, but you have no access to the antibiotics that could actually save her life. This limitation weighs heavily on you as you prepare to leave the cottage for a few hours of rest. You've done everything you know how to do, applied all the skills you've learned through years of experience, but the final outcome is largely beyond your control. The next few days will be determined by factors you can't predict or influence, biological processes that are still poorly understood even by the most educated people of your time. The family's gratitude is evident as you pack your supplies. They offer you food, coin, and promises of future favors in payment for your services. But beneath their thanks, you can sense the anxiety that will persist until both mother and baby are clearly out of danger. They need to believe that your presence guarantees a successful outcome, but you know that your skills, while valuable, are no match for the many things that can still go wrong. As you step back into the cold morning air, pulling your cloak tight against the October wind, you're already thinking about the other families in the village who might need your services. There's a woman in the next village over who's expecting her first child and has been having complications. Another family where the mother died in childbirth 6 months ago, leaving a husband struggling to care for 3 young children. A teenage girl whose pregnancy has been difficult from the beginning and who may need your help soon. Each of these situations represents another test of your skills, another opportunity for your reputation to be enhanced or destroyed, another set of life and death decisions that you'll need to make with limited resources and knowledge. The weight of these responsibilities never leaves you, even during the brief periods when you're not actively attending a birth. Your house, when you finally reach it, feels like a sanctuary after the intense atmosphere of the birthing cottage. But even here, you can't fully escape the pressures of your profession. Your shelves are lined with herbs and remedies that you've collected and prepared, each one representing knowledge that could save lives or, if used incorrectly, cause harm. Your reputation for having these supplies makes you valuable to the community, but it also makes you suspect to those who don't understand the difference between healing and witchcraft. The knowledge you carry is both blessing and burden. Every successful delivery adds to your reputation, but it also raises expectations that become harder to meet. People begin to believe you possess almost supernatural abilities to ensure safe births, when the truth is that you're working with tools and techniques that are only marginally better than blind hope. You settle into your small wooden chair by the dying embers of your hearth, but sleep won't come easily. Your mind keeps returning to the cottage, to the woman's fever, to the subtle signs that could mean nothing or could herald disaster. This is the curse of your profession. Even when you're not actively working, you're thinking about your patients, worrying about complications that might develop while you sleep. The sound of footsteps on the cobblestones outside makes you freeze. Late-night visitors usually mean one of two things. Either someone needs your services urgently, or someone has died under your care, and angry family members are coming to hold you accountable. You move quietly to your window, peering through the gaps in the wooden shutters. It's young Thomas, the baker's apprentice, his face pale with exhaustion and worry. You know before he speaks that someone in his household is in labor. His master's wife is expecting her 6th child, and her previous deliveries have become increasingly difficult with each pregnancy. You grab your satchel without hesitation, knowing that delay could mean the difference between life and death. The baker's house is larger than the cottage you left earlier, but the scene inside is eerily similar. The same stifling air thick with smoke and fear. The same cluster of anxious women offering advice that ranges from useless to dangerous. The same husband pacing nervously, desperate to help, but knowing he's powerless in this situation. But this delivery immediately presents you with complications that test every skill you've developed over your career. The woman has been in labor for nearly 12 hours, far longer than is safe for either mother or child. Her contractions have weakened significantly, and you can tell from her exhaustion that she doesn't have much strength left. The baby hasn't descended properly into the birth canal, suggesting a positioning problem that could make delivery impossible without intervention. Your examination reveals what you feared. The baby is positioned sideways across the birth canal, a presentation that virtually guarantees death for both mother and child unless you can somehow turn it. This is one of the most dangerous situations you can encounter as a midwife, requiring techniques that push the boundaries of what's possible with medieval medical knowledge. The family watches you with desperate hope as you wash your hands in the basin of hot water they've prepared. You don't tell them that what you're about to attempt succeeds less than half the time, or that even successful intervention often results in severe complications for the mother. They need to believe that you can save both lives, even though you know the odds are stacked against everyone in this room. Working by flickering candlelight, you begin the delicate process of trying to turn the baby internally. Your hands must be incredibly gentle to avoid injuring either the child or the mother, but firm enough to actually move a baby that weighs several pounds and is wedged tightly in the birth canal. Every movement causes the woman excruciating pain, but stopping could mean losing both patients. The process takes nearly an hour of careful manipulation, with frequent pauses to allow the mother to rest and to check that the baby's heartbeat is still strong. Several times you think you've succeeded, only to have the baby slip back into its dangerous position. The woman's strength is fading visibly, and you know you don't have many more opportunities to get this right. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, you feel the baby's head slip into the proper position. The relief is overwhelming, but you force yourself to remain focused. The delivery is far from over, and the trauma of the turning process has exhausted both mother and child. The next few hours will determine whether your intervention was successful or whether you've simply delayed an inevitable tragedy. The baby is born just as the first light of dawn creeps through the windows, but the delivery is complicated by excessive bleeding that threatens the mother's life. You work frantically to control the hemorrhage while simultaneously caring for an infant who seems weak and unresponsive after the difficult birth. This is the nightmare scenario that haunts every midwife, where saving one life might cost the other. Your supply of herbs includes remedies that might help with the bleeding, but using them requires careful calculation. Too much of certain plants could stop the bleeding, but also stop the woman's heart. Too little might be ineffective, allowing her to bleed to death while you watch helplessly. You make your decision based on experience and intuition, knowing that you won't know if you chose correctly until it's too late to change course. The baby's breathing is shallow and irregular, another complication that demands immediate attention. You work to clear its airways and stimulate stronger breathing while keeping one eye on the mother's condition. The family members hover anxiously, wanting to help, but not understanding what needs to be done. Their questions and suggestions create additional pressure as you try to focus on the medical crisis unfolding before you. Hours pass in a blur of urgent activity. You manage to slow the mother's bleeding to a manageable level, but she's lost enough blood that her recovery will be long and uncertain. The baby's breathing has improved, but it remains weak and hasn't shown the alertness that indicates a healthy newborn. Both patients are alive, but neither is out of danger. As the morning progresses, you find yourself in the uncomfortable position of managing the family's expectations while being honest about the serious risks that remain. The husband wants reassurance that his wife will recover completely. The grandmother insists that the baby just needs more time to strengthenations of what the other relatives offer their own interpret various symptoms might mean. Your professional judgment tells you that both patients face significant ongoing risks. The mother could develop infection from the difficult delivery, or the blood loss could leave her too weak to fight off other complications. The baby's weakness could indicate internal injuries from the turning process, or it might simply be exhaustion that will resolve with time and proper care. But explaining these possibilities to the family requires walking a careful line between honesty and hope. Too much emphasis on the dangers could create panic that makes your job more difficult. Too much reassurance could leave them unprepared for complications that might develop over the next few days. You settle on a middle course, acknowledging that both patients need careful monitoring while expressing cautious optimism about their recovery. This approach satisfies no one completely, but it allows you to provide realistic expectations without destroying the hope that both mother and baby need to survive the challenging days ahead. The baker insists on paying you immediately, pressing silver coins into your hand despite your protests that the outcome is still uncertain. His generosity is motivated partly by gratitude and partly by superstition. He believes that proper payment will ensure your continued attention and perhaps bring good fortune to his family. You accept the money because refusing would offend him, but the weight of the coins in your pocket feels like additional responsibility rather than reward. As you prepare to leave, promising to return that evening to check on both patients, you're acutely aware that your reputation in this community now depends on the outcome of two extremely difficult cases. If both mothers and babies survive and thrive, your status as the village's most skilled midwife will be enhanced. But if either case ends in tragedy, whispers will begin about whether you're losing your abilities or whether your recent string of difficult births indicates something more sinister. The walk back to your own house takes you through the village center, where early morning merchants are setting up their stalls. Several people nod to you respectfully, but you can sense the curiosity behind their greetings. Word travels quickly in small communities, and everyone knows that you've been attending two difficult births in the same night. They're watching for clues about how things went, ready to spread news of triumph or tragedy throughout the village before noon. Your own exhaustion is becoming overwhelming, but you know that rest will have to wait. There are preparations to make for your evening visits, herbs to prepare for potential complications, and supplies to replenish in case other emergencies arise. The life of a medieval midwife doesn't allow for the luxury of recovery time between crises. The next few days blur together in a cycle of visits, treatments, and anxious monitoring. The first woman's fever breaks on the third day, and both she and her baby begin showing clear signs of improvement, the relief you feel is profound, but tempered by continued concern about the second case. The baker's wife remains weak and pale, struggling to nurse her baby and showing little improvement in her overall condition. The infant is gaining some strength, but still seems smaller and less responsive than a healthy newborn should be. These are the cases that test not just your medical skills, but your ability to provide hope and support when the outcome remains uncertain. Your daily visits become a delicate balance of providing necessary medical care while managing the emotional needs of families caught between hope and despair. You adjust treatments based on subtle changes in your patient's conditions, offer encouragement when progress seems slow, and prepare family members for the possibility that recovery might take much longer than they expect. The village watches these cases with intense interest, understanding that the outcomes will influence how they view your abilities and whether they'll trust you with their own future medical needs. Every decision you make is scrutinized not just for its immediate medical value, but for what it might reveal about your competence and character. This is the reality of being a medieval midwife. Every birth is a test of skills learned through experience rather than formal training. Every successful delivery enhances your reputation, but raises expectations for future cases. Every complication threatens not just your patients' lives, but your own standing in a community that desperately needs your services while remaining deeply suspicious of the knowledge that makes those services possible. The weight of these responsibilities follows you everywhere, shaping every aspect of your life, from the herbs you grow in your garden to the relationships you form with your neighbors. You are simultaneously essential and vulnerable, respected and feared, trusted with the most precious moments of people's lives, while living under constant scrutiny that could turn deadly if circumstances shift against you. You've been working without rest for 3 days straight now, and the exhaustion is beginning to affect your judgment in ways that terrify you. Your hands shake slightly as you measure out willow bark for the baker's wife, and twice today you've caught yourself reaching for the wrong herb before correcting the mistake at the last moment. These small errors could easily become fatal ones, but there's no one else to take over your responsibilities. The autumn rain has turned the village paths into treacherous rivers of mud that pull at your worn leather boots with every step. Your woolen cloak, once a reliable barrier against the weather, now hangs heavy and sodden across your shoulders, providing little protection from the cold that seeps through to your bones. But the physical discomfort pales compared to the weight of carrying two families' hopes through each soggy dawn and into another uncertain night. When you arrive at the baker's house this morning, the scene that greets you sends ice through your veins. The woman lies motionless on her straw mattress, her skin bearing the grayish pallor you've learned to associate with approaching death. Her breathing is so shallow, you have to lean close to detect any movement at all. The baby, wrapped in increasingly dirty linens, hasn't nursed properly in over a day and seems to be growing weaker rather than stronger. The baker meets you at the door with eyes that hold accusations he's too afraid to voice directly. His mother-in-law whispers prayers in the corner, but her glances toward you carry a different message entirely. When treatments fail, when skilled hands cannot prevent tragedy, communities need someone to blame. And the woman who claims knowledge of life and death makes a convenient target for grief that has nowhere else to direct itself. You kneel beside your patient, your trained fingers searching for the pulse at her wrist while your mind races through possibilities you haven't yet tried. The pulse is there, but thread thin and irregular, telling you that her body is failing despite your best efforts. Her skin feels clammy and cold, another sign that the blood loss from her difficult delivery continues to take its toll days later. The baby's condition is equally troubling. When you lift the tiny form, you can feel how much weight it has lost since birth. Its cry, when it manages one at all, is weak and thin, nothing like the robust wails that indicate a thriving newborn. You've seen babies who seem this fragile recover completely, but you've also watched others fade away despite every intervention you could attempt. Your examination reveals complications you hadn't fully recognized before. The mother's bleeding, while no longer the dramatic hemorrhage of the first day, continues as a steady seepage that's slowly draining her remaining strength. The baby shows signs of what experienced midwives call failure to thrive, a mysterious condition where infants simply seem unable to adapt to life outside the womb. The family watches your every movement with desperate intensity, searching your face for signs of hope or despair. You've learned to control your expressions during these examinations, but the effort of maintaining professional calm while confronting the possibility of losing both patients feels overwhelming. Your reputation, your livelihood, and potentially your safety all depend on the outcome of decisions you're making with knowledge that feels painfully inadequate. You reach into your satchel for herbs you've been reluctant to use because of their potency and unpredictable effects. Foxglove leaves that might strengthen the mother's failing heart, but could just as easily stop it entirely if the dosage is wrong. Poppy extract that could give the baby enough relief from whatever internal distress it's experiencing to begin nursing properly, or could suppress its already weak breathing to the point of death. These are the moments when being a medieval midwife feels less like practicing medicine and more like walking a tightrope over an abyss. Every choice carries enormous risks, but choosing to do nothing is itself a decision that could prove fatal. You prepare the treatments with hands that have steadied somewhat now that action is possible, even if that action might ultimately prove disastrous. The foxglove tea you brew for the mother must be precisely measured, each leaf counted and recounted, because the difference between a therapeutic dose and a lethal one is measured in individual plant fragments. You've used this remedy successfully before, but always with the knowledge that success might be followed immediately by catastrophic failure if you've miscalculated even slightly. The baby requires even more delicate handling. The poppy preparation you've mixed is diluted to what you hope is a safe concentration, but determining proper dosages for newborns is largely guesswork based on experience with older children. Too much could suppress the infant's breathing permanently. Too little might provide no benefit while wasting precious time that could be spent trying other approaches. As you administer these treatments, you're acutely aware of the family's scrutiny and the broader implications of whatever happens next. If both patients improve, your reputation will be enhanced beyond anything you've achieved before. But if either dies, especially after you've given them unfamiliar remedies, accusations of poisoning or witchcraft could follow swiftly. The waiting begins again. But this time, it feels different. You've committed to a course of action that will determine not just your patient's fates, but potentially your own. The next few hours will reveal whether your knowledge and intuition are sufficient to navigate this crisis, or whether you've finally encountered complications beyond your ability to manage. The mother's response to treatment is subtle, but encouraging. Her pulse strengthens slightly, and some color returns to her cheeks. Her breathing deepens just enough to suggest that her body is beginning to respond to the cardiac stimulation provided by the foxglove. These changes are minor, barely perceptible to untrained observers, but they represent significant improvements in her condition. The baby's reaction is more dramatic and more terrifying. Initially, the poppy extract seems to calm whatever internal distress has been preventing proper nursing. The infant settles into a deeper, more peaceful sleep than it has achieved since birth. But as the hours pass, you begin to worry that the sleep is too deep, the breathing too slow and shallow. You find yourself checking the baby's pulse every few minutes, your own heart racing with anxiety about whether you've provided relief or hastened death. The line between therapeutic and toxic doses is always narrow, but with infants it's almost impossibly thin. Your experience tells you to wait and observe, but your fear urges immediate action to counteract potential overdose. The family's mood shifts as they observe these changes. The mother's improvement brings hope and renewed faith in your abilities. But the baby's unnatural stillness creates new anxieties that manifest as whispered conversations and sideways glances. They want to trust your judgment, but they're also preparing themselves for the possibility that your treatments have made things worse rather than better. Evening arrives with no dramatic changes in either direction. The mother continues to show gradual improvement, her pulse becoming more regular and her color slowly returning to normal. The baby remains deeply asleep but continues breathing, its pulse steady, if somewhat slow. These are positive signs, but the lack of more obvious progress keeps everyone in a state of tense uncertainty. Your own exhaustion has reached levels that make continued vigilance dangerous. You've been awake for nearly 4 days with only brief moments of rest, and your ability to make sound medical judgments is compromised by fatigue that affects everything from your manual dexterity to your emotional stability. But leaving your patients at this critical juncture feels impossible, even though staying might result in errors that could prove fatal. The compromise you reach satisfies no one completely, but represents the best balance you can achieve between medical necessity and human limitations. You'll remain with the family through the night, monitoring both patients for signs of improvement or deterioration. But you'll also allow yourself brief periods of rest, trusting the women of the household to wake you if any dramatic changes occur. Sleep, when it comes, is fitful and filled with dreams that blur the line between your current crisis and past cases that ended badly. You wake repeatedly to check on your patients, never fully certain whether the sounds that disturbed your rest were real emergencies or products of your exhausted imagination. Each time you examine the mother and baby, you're relieved to find them still alive, but their conditions remain precarious enough to prevent any real peace of mind. Dawn breaks gray and cold, with frost covering the windows of the baker's house. The mother wakes naturally for the first time since her difficult delivery, asking for water in a voice that's weak but clear. This is the first truly encouraging sign you've seen, indicating that her strength is returning and her mind is clearing from the fog of pain and blood loss that has dominated the past few days. The baby also shows signs of improvement, crying with more vigor than before and showing interest in nursing for the first time since the difficult birth. These developments fill you with cautious optimism, but you force yourself to remain alert to the possibility of setbacks that could reverse this progress just as suddenly as it appeared. The family's relief is palpable, but you notice how quickly their gratitude transforms into expectations for continued improvement. They want assurance that the crisis has passed completely, that both patients will recover fully without any lasting effects from their ordeal. You understand their need for certainty, but your experience has taught you that recovery from serious complications is often slow and unpredictable. Your explanation of what to expect over the coming days requires careful balance between honest assessment and maintaining hope. The mother will need weeks to fully recover her strength, and there's still risk of infection or other complications that could develop without warning. The baby appears to be improving, but will require careful monitoring to ensure that its early weakness doesn't have lasting effects on growth and development. The conversations you have with family members reveal the complex social dynamics surrounding your work. The baker's obvious relief and gratitude compete with his mother-in-law's continued suspicion about your methods. The neighbors who stop by to check on the family's welfare clearly want information about your treatments, whether from genuine concern or simple curiosity about techniques they don't understand. These interactions remind you that being a medieval midwife involves much more than medical knowledge and clinical skills. You must navigate community politics, manage family dynamics, and maintain relationships that could prove crucial to your future livelihood. Every word you speak, every treatment decision you make contributes to a reputation that determines whether families will trust you with their most precious moments. The improvement in both patients continues through the morning, giving you confidence that the immediate crisis has passed. The mother is able to sit up and take substantial amounts of broth, while the baby nurses successfully for the first time since birth. These developments represent major victories, but they also mark the beginning of a new phase in your responsibilities as their caregiver. Recovery from difficult births requires ongoing monitoring and support that can extend for weeks or even months. You'll need to visit this family regularly to ensure that the mother's strength returns properly and that the baby continues to thrive. Each visit will involve assessments that could reveal new complications, decisions about adjusting treatments, and management of family expectations about the pace of recovery. The success of this case will enhance your reputation throughout the village and surrounding areas, potentially bringing new patients who seek your services based on stories of your ability to handle difficult situations. But it will also raise expectations that could prove impossible to meet in future cases where complications prove less amenable to treatment. As you finally prepare to leave the baker's house, confident that both patients are stable enough to survive a few hours without direct supervision, you're already thinking about the other responsibilities waiting for your attention. The woman from your first case needs continued monitoring to ensure her recovery remains on track. There are other pregnant women in the village who may require your services soon, and your supplies of essential herbs need replenishing after the intensive treatments of the past few days. The walk back to your own cottage takes you past the church where the morning service is just ending. Several parishioners nod respectfully as you pass, word of your recent successes having spread through the community overnight. But you also notice the way some people avert their eyes or make small gestures that you recognize as protective charms against evil influences. This mixture of respect and suspicion is the constant reality of your profession. Your skills are desperately needed and gratefully received when crises arise, but the knowledge that makes you valuable also makes you dangerous in the eyes of people who don't understand the difference between healing and harmful magic. The same hands that saved 2 lives last night could be accused of causing future deaths if circumstances turn against you. Your cottage, when you finally reach it, feels like a sanctuary where you can drop the mask of professional competence and acknowledge the terror you've been suppressing for days. The knowledge that you came close to losing both patients, that your treatments could easily have proven fatal rather than curative, weighs on you now that the immediate crisis has passed. You settle into your wooden chair by the cold hearth, too exhausted to build a fire, but too restless to sleep, despite your overwhelming fatigue. Your hands, which have been steady and sure throughout the recent crisis, now shake with the delayed reaction to stress that you couldn't afford to acknowledge while lives hung in the balance. The herbs and remedies scattered across your table tell the story of desperate measures taken in desperate circumstances. Some containers are nearly empty, their contents consumed in treatments that pushed the boundaries of what you considered safe practice. Other preparations remain unused, backup options that you prepared but ultimately decided were too risky to attempt. Each of these substances represents knowledge gained through experience that no formal education could provide. You know which plants can stop bleeding and which might cause it, which preparations can strengthen a failing heart and which could stop it entirely, which treatments are safe for pregnant women and which could cause miscarriage or birth defects. But this knowledge comes with a burden that never leaves you. Every successful treatment raises questions about how you acquired such specialized understanding. Every remedy you prepare could be evidence of supernatural abilities if examined by suspicious authorities. Every cure you achieve makes you more valuable to your community and more vulnerable to accusations that could destroy everything you've worked to build. The sound of footsteps approaching your cottage door makes you tense despite your exhaustion. Late morning visitors usually mean one of two things. Either someone needs your services for a new emergency, or word has reached church authorities about treatments they consider too unusual or effective to be entirely natural. You move to the window cautiously, peering through the gaps in the wooden shutters to identify your visitor before deciding whether to answer their knock. The relief you feel when you recognize the village priest is mixed with new anxiety about why he might want to speak with you privately. Father Benedict has always been more tolerant than some clergy about the practical necessities of your profession, but recent successes might have attracted attention from higher church authorities who view unusual medical knowledge with deep suspicion. His expression as he waits at your door gives no indication of whether this visit brings approval or investigation. You open the door with the careful politeness that has served you well in previous encounters with religious authority, inviting him inside while mentally reviewing every treatment decision you've made recently for anything that could be construed as inappropriate or suspicious. His words, when they come, surprise you with their warmth and genuine gratitude, rather than the veiled accusations you had feared. The baker's wife and her child are recovering well, he says, settling into the chair across from your small table. Word has reached me of the skill you showed during her difficult delivery. The entire family credits you with saving both lives. You nod carefully, unsure where this conversation is leading. Father Benedict has always been diplomatic in his dealings with you, but praise from the church often comes with conditions attached. I've also heard, he continues, his voice dropping slightly, that you used some unusual remedies during the treatment. Plants that some in the community consider potent beyond normal healing herbs. Here it comes. The careful questioning that could lead to formal accusations. If your answers don't satisfy his concerns about the methods you employed, you choose your words with the precision of someone walking across thin ice. I used only what my experience has shown to be effective, Father. Herbs that have helped in similar cases before, prepared with prayers for divine guidance. The response is truthful while avoiding specifics that could be interpreted as admissions of supernatural practice. He studies your face for a long moment, then nods slowly. I believe your intentions are pure, and the results speak to God's blessing upon your work. But I must warn you that Bishop Marcus has been asking questions about unusual healings throughout the diocese. There have been accusations in other villages about midwives whose success rates seem to exceed what natural skill alone might explain. His warning settles over you like a shroud as he takes his leave, promising to speak favorably of your work should any official inquiries arise. But you know that promises from village priests carry little weight when bishops decide that examples must be made. As evening approaches and the autumn wind rattles your shutters, you understand that this is the true nightmare of being a medieval midwife. not just the blood and pain, the impossible decisions between mother and child, or even the constant threat of losing patience despite your best efforts. The real horror lies in the razor's edge you walk every single day. Too many failures and you're branded incompetent, left to watch mothers and babies die while other hands take over your life's work. Too many successes and you're branded something far worse, dragged before tribunals where your healing hands become evidence of unholy bargains. You saved 2 lives this week, and for that mercy, you may soon find yourself fighting for your own. In a world that desperately needs your knowledge, but fears the very expertise that makes you valuable, there is no safe path forward. Only the endless cycle of birth and death, hope and terror, salvation and suspicion. Tomorrow, there will be another knock at your door, another woman in labor, another test of skills that could save lives or seal your fate. And you will answer that call just as you always have, carrying your leather satchel into the darkness where life and death dance their eternal waltz. This was the nightmare of the medieval midwife. Not a single moment of horror, but a lifetime balanced on the knife's edge between miracle and heresy, where saving lives could cost you everything.